Center. And this week we have Sandy Ward, who will be talking about the restoration efforts of Mālama Pu'uloa. She's the executive director of Hui o Ho'ohonua Community Nonprofit, and she earned her master's in teaching from Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon, where she taught middle school science for 10 years. And in 1994, she relocated to Oahu, where she taught science and ran the Regional Science Learning Center at Mililani High School for 25 years. With her retirement in 2019, Sandy now devotes her energy to the nonprofit she co-founded in 2015 and its primary program, Mālama Pu'uloa, the restoration of Pearl Harbor to abundance. Living in Hawaii for 30 years, mentoring young scientists, and learning from Hawaiian Aina stewards has had a profound impact on the way she works to restore the waters of the Ewa region. Sandy calls herself a lifelong learner and professional optimist. So, Sandy, I'll let you go ahead and take it away.
Mahalo, Carrie. Aloha mai kako. I want to invite everyone here to take a moment to look at Will Weaver's stunning photograph of Pu'uloa, Keawalau o Pu'uloa. Throughout this presentation, I will use its Hawaiian name or the shortened version. And this is a stunning photo from the shores of Kapapapuhi Point, looking out at Ka'iho'opala'ai and the entire Ewa moku in the distance. I bet, like me, you've had a crazy week, so take a deep breath. And I want to thank all of you for joining me in this pre-Pauhana hour. And thanks to those of you who might watch this later. I just want to say that this place inspires me, and this perspective is not one that I knew for 25 years. I've only recently, in the last 10 years or so, begun to spend time looking at the island from this way. And this choice of a photograph was purposeful. It allows you to place the Ewa moku and Pu'uloa at the center of the island, a place where the vaivai, or the true wealth, still exists in these waters. I've already been introduced so eloquently by Carrie, but I will say this, you're a humbling audience to present to, and I'm more than a little nervous. So if you know me out there, please send me some positive vibes. But to be honest, teaching high school and teaching and working with these amazing young people is a humbling experience every day. And I did that for 35 years. And this morning, I spent my entire day with 85 seventh graders, also a humbling experience. But I want to say more than anything that when I moved here 30 years ago, I was so humbled by what I didn't know about Hawaii, what I had not been taught. And I'm so grateful to all of the kumu who have so patiently shared mana'o with me, because the wisdom of the Hawaiian people and the way that they manage water and food systems is still something that I have a profound respect for. But the young people in this picture and the young people I spent the morning with, that's why some people call me a professional optimist. I do want to share my intent behind this presentation. I want to share a little bit about who we are, and it's much more than a nonprofit. It's the entire hui. Why we're focused on biocultural restoration in the Ewa moku and Pu'uloa. I want to share some specifics about our work, especially in the hope that some of this audience will consider working with us. So a shameless plug right here at the start. And I want to highlight some of the ways in which collaborative, community-driven change is making a positive difference in the region. We're creating hope spots, and I hope that you feel hopeful when this presentation is Pau. So Hui o Ho'ohonua was founded by those who live and work in Ewa. We're a community stewardship networking organization, and we're relatively small and relatively new. And this is a pretty typical gathering of some of our amazing community hui, and that very enthusiastic gentleman in the bright yellow shirt there is Tony Chance. He is the co-founder of this nonprofit with me. I want to give a shout out to him. He is a 4-time Navy combat vet who began his academic journey after he retired from the military at Leeward Community College. And he was struggling a bit, so he walked into the Native Hawaiian Student Center. And he is, like me, without a drop of Hawaiian blood, but he was treated with such aloha and such kindness. That's what began his journey, his learning journey. And together we are much more than a small nonprofit. I'll describe our hui to you, but it took us a while to evolve our mission. And our mission is to address the perpetuation of the historical trauma to the land, water, and people of the Moku on Oahu. It's much more than the bombing. It's the destruction of some of the most amazing food systems and water systems in the world. But we are inspired by progress, and we do believe that we can Mālama pu'uloa. We can restore pu'uloa to its full abundance, to aina momona. And why do we believe that? I'm going to have you look a little bit more closely at our hui. And this is what I call a spaghetti diagram. I want to thank Ken Kaneshiro for introducing me to this, this tool. But this just kind of gives you an idea of what our hui is like. And I will say example after example of how every person in here and the constantly evolving hui that we have is why I'm optimistic. So I will say that we were having trouble, like many nonprofits, with funding. So I'm very grateful that Congressman Case wrote a letter of support for a grant application that we completed with the folks at DAR, the Division of Aquatic Resources, to get National Coastal Wetland Conservation grant money from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm very grateful that we were able to put the cultural context into our application because of Uncle Shad Kane, who helped us understand the place where we were working, Kapapapuhi Point. And why have we been able to clear now almost 8 acres of invasive red mangrove? Why have we been able to restore is because of all of that backbone of community volunteers. So I think many nonprofits have a similar hui, but I want to be specific in this presentation and give a shout out to all of those who are helping us get it done. I want to say that we started and we are still grounded by this portion of our hui, of our network. The kanako iwi mentioned here are ones that will patiently and honestly tell us when we're going the wrong direction. That's not always common. So we can ask the folks in this list, is this pono? And we're very grateful to each and every one of them for constantly advising us. And I do want to apologize because the app Coggle doesn't handle Olelo Hawaii diacriticals very well. So it's loko ia paeao. Anyway, I just want to say that no matter who we work with, whether it's the military, the Division of Aquatic Resources, or the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, we work to strive to integrate Ike Kupuna into everything we do. And we're very grateful for the Kulana Noi'i document that was created by the Hawaii Sea Grant, the Hawaii Sea Grant College Program, and the respected team of collaborators, because that document helps us navigate when we work with other folks. Another sector of our hui is what many nonprofits do, but we need funding and we very much believe in civic engagement. So one of the things I will say is that we're not bound by sources of funding and we're not bound by not being able to do policy advocacy. So organizations like ours are vital components of public-private partnerships that can pave the way for research and funding and positive change. I just want to make a point of saying that I am here today because Senator Schatz championed a congressionally directed funds. And in collaboration with, I'm going backwards on purpose, in collaboration with Kamuela Enos and the UH Office of Indigenous Innovation, we were able to be awarded a congressional earmark. And we were able to hire an amazing assistant executive director, a former student of mine from Mililani High School, which enables me to have the time to be a community collaborator with the UH Red Hill response team. So I'm going to forward to that section. And boy, this slide is complicated, so I'll let you wrap your heads around this. I want to thank Aurora Kagawa. She believed that a community nonprofit has a place in this Red Hill response. And what I did is I tried to graph all of the agencies involved. And here's Hui Honua way in the corner, circled in red. But for this group of scientists at UH to believe that a community organization had a place at the table means a lot to me. I also want to note that our organization is in year 3 of a Centers for Disease Control and American Public Health Association grant. And we're focused on another public health threat presented by the toxicity in the nearshore food webs of Pu'uloa. And every agency that's involved in the Red Hill response is also mandated to address that threat. So I'm very honored and very proud to be working with a number of University of Hawaii faculty and scientists in trying to tackle and create a framework to make a difference, to break down siloed approaches and to really do innovative collaboration. It's not just us, our organization. University of Hawaii has been behind building these connections. I also want to thank Megan Donahue, Eileen Nally, and Honor Booth, because they were the ones who tackled the challenge of sampling heavy metal toxicity in the sediments, fish, and crabs of Pu'uloa, so that we knew that that threat still continues. And they did it in a way that was not easy. They were not provided access to waters controlled by the Navy. So all of this collaboration, including 7th grade volunteers, allowed us to clear a way for them to take sampling right at the mouth of Honouliuli Stream, where it flows into Pu'uloa. And that way we could find out our answers, could find out if there's still a threat to the public, and sadly there is. And this is the type of innovative collaboration that is growing from our network and from all of the amazing folks that work with us. We appreciate that you have faith in a small community organization. And this part of our hui, I call it the kua. This is the backbone. This is where we first started because of my years as a public health teacher. This is what I'm most passionate about. This is where I get my hope and optimism, even when things get very challenging, as they have with the Red Hill water contamination crisis. So I do want to say that this includes the next generation of researchers and change makers. If we don't create wonderful opportunities for these folks to learn and grow, who will be the next generation of scientists? I also want to say that we're collaborating to create amazing learning opportunities. The congressional earmark that I mentioned also includes Leah Bremer and Susan Crow, who have worked with Kamuela Enos and I to create 2 graduate assistance positions. We have 2 brilliant Wahine scientists who are working with us, and this summer we'll be able to offer an undergraduate internship for 12 amazing undergraduates at any University of Hawaii campus. So if there's any students listening out there, and for those of you that are faculty, we'll reach out to you during the recruitment phase next month. I want to say that this group of students and young people asks really great questions, and they're also helping us develop answers. It was an 8th grader who figured out that pohoihui, a plant that really is not a wetlands plant, grew very well in a challenging section of our current restoration plot. This is also a very powerful volunteer workforce, and they're creating significant wetland restoration results. They're beginning to fill gaps in natural resource monitoring, like community science and monitoring projects all over the island. And I want to also do a final shout out to Anushka Fauci, because she has been a collaborator with us from the beginning. She's a member of our board, and she saw the power of a little tiny nonprofit, its collaborators, and all of these amazing young people to make a difference. So where does all that amazing hui work? Well, we're honored to work in the ewa moku. And I realized that not everyone is used to identifying what the ewa moku is. I myself got it mixed up with Ewa Beach until I started to learn more. And I also will admit that I didn't know that I was teaching in the ewa moku, because as you can see by the map on the left, it is the largest moku on the island of Oahu. And all of those lands, when it rains as it is now, the waters flow into Pu'uloa. That includes Mililani, Aiea, Makakilo, Waipahu, Aiea, Pearl City, Kapolei. We're so used to saying town names in high schools that sometimes we forget. And there was a reason why the brilliant Hawaiian land managers created this division and created ahupua'a that allowed them to manage their resources from ridge to reef. So the diagram on the right describes the approximate boundaries of the ahupua'a. And you'll notice that so many of them begin with WAI, vai. So I want to point out that we started in Honouliuli. That's our largest restoration project, where we are in the process of clearing 28 acres of red mangrove and restoring wetlands. And what I never knew existed were 3 Hawaiian loko'ia, or fish ponds. We've cleared the mouth of the Honouliuli stream that created a flood risk for a major north-south tsunami evacuation route, Fort Weaver Road, and threatened the Queens West Medical Center. So now that the stream is unplugged from red mangrove, much of that flood threat has been mitigated. The star on the right in the Waiawa Manana Ahupua'a border is a very inspirational project to us that we call the Hui Alaloa, or the Sacred Path. That inspiration came from students from Waipahu High School who envisioned that the leeward bikeway could be more than weeds and rubbish, that it could be a thriving and holistic green space. So those students invited us to help them because their project fizzled right at the beginning of COVID. So tomorrow for 4 hours, that's where I'll be. And here's another shameless plug. I'll invite you to join me before this presentation is over. We're there once a month. The star in the Waikele watershed is exciting to us because the project that I just mentioned is right across from Lehua Elementary School. And the principal of that school, Alvin Fukuhara, got transferred to Waipahu Intermediate. When he was talking to community leaders about the area around Waipahu Intermediate School that also borders the Waikele stream, and the fact that it was choked with weeds and invasives, and yet they envisioned a huge garden complex and a riparian zone that was restored with native vegetation. He said, you know, there's this group working down by Lehua Elementary School where I taught last year. Maybe we should invite them in to help. So what we find, we don't come in and fix things. We come in and resource community volunteers, community activists. And maybe it's because I was a public school teacher for so long, but I have no shame in asking anyone to give us permission to work, to bring tools, to come help us. And I'm excited that those 3 stars, I'm literally picturing all the folks that have come and created positive change. Restored wetlands, recovering fish ponds, a stream that flows where the mullet that are famous for the area, the baby pua'ama come swimming up in the hundreds, and where we are growing a holistic green space. I will say that we are planning to expand and connect those 3 stars, and that our dream is that the projects are continued to, and they grow up Mauka. We have a vision for ridge to reef watershed partnerships, and Even though we're very close on the island of Oahu, there are no ridge to reef watershed partnerships on the entire island. I will say that there are those who say that we're doing too much, and there are days when I feel it. So if you look at this diagram, can one organization create food, protect land, do education, community engagement? Well, we are just so committed to this, what we call a holistic and sustainable approach. We could actually break each one of those circles down into smaller parts. We don't feel that we can take any of those out, and we put culturally pono on top for a reason. We do believe in the power of our hui to make this approach work, and we are contributing to food and water security. We work to integrate Hawaiian history and place names and practices and their brilliant science and technology into all of our restoration and all of our education work. We resource community and school leaders. We respect the community. We don't have all the answers. Gosh, I've only lived here half my life, 30 years. I wasn't born and raised here. My ancestors are not from here. But the mana'o that's held within these communities is truly awe-inspiring. And that's what helps us contribute to relevant, impactful education programs. We don't need to just tell these young people what to do. The project-based learning that is occurring in schools throughout the entire moku is amazing. And every single native plant that we plant in our restoration areas, every single food plant has been propagated lovingly, outplanted with outplanting pilots to find out the best practices, the BMPs, if you will, the best management practices. So I want to say that all of this, all of our community is contributing to relevant, impactful education that educates us. The other thing is we're creating partnerships that did not previously exist. And again, maybe it's that school teacher in me where you just sit the kids down and you get them to work together. The siloed approaches that exist were frankly shocking to me. I didn't know that people who were in the city and county Department of Parks and Recreation didn't work with the Division of Aquatic Resources or the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, because at our restoration site in Kapapapuhi, they're all literally within walking distance. What I do know is each one of those organizations has very smart, very hardworking, very lovely people. So I'll talk in a little bit about the Pu'uloa Strategic Partnership, which we created with the help of those at Leeward Community College, where we bring people together in many of these organizations, including students, at least once a year. Last but not least, I'll say that we're impacting policy and engaging policymakers. So again, we advocate for many of the policies that are impacting funding and food production throughout the state. I do want to give a shout out to Senator Henry Aquino. He did introduce a bill, Senate Bill 844, which is in the Ways and Means Committee of the Senate right now. It allows people in the state to choose a Mālama Pu'uloa license plate. We hope that will provide a moderate stream of unrestricted funds so that we can feed our volunteers, because no grant money covers that. And we hope that it will raise awareness, because I'm guessing, like many of you, I didn't really understand for many years that I lived here how large the ewa moku was and what we're uncovering, what a place of abundance it was. So I want to kind of sum up all of those strategies in a very concise way. Our key strategy is Pilina partnerships. We're learners. Pictured up in the top is the wonderful kia'i of the ewa moku. We learn from so many of them, and we're still learning. We still have a lot to learn. But then, as I mentioned before, we develop partnerships like the evolving Pu'uloa Strategic Partnership. And For all of those engaged in that, it is increasing the capacity of each organization to achieve their mandates. Because as you know, many are underfunded and understaffed with enormous missions. So shameless plug, I think number 3. If at the end of this presentation, you want to consider joining us, it's not a closed club. We invite anyone who wants to help us develop new collaborations. Key strategy number 2 is what I just came from. Honoshim, who I still missed, shared with me a newer understanding or a deeper understanding of Hana. He called it that which feeds the soul. But to me, showing up and getting in the mud and doing the hard work and to keep showing up and not just talk about change, but do it, that's been so meaningful. And I want to say that the picture on the top shows the depth of the mangrove that was growing at the mouth of the Honouliuli stream. And the picture on the bottom shows it opened up. That is the same perspective in the same direction. We've engaged over 8,000 volunteers in just the last 3.5 years. Of course, we shut down during the pandemic. I remember going and pulling baby mangrove in the days when only one person could go to a park at a time. I remember inviting 5 kids at a time wearing masks while we were sweating out there in the Eva sun. But I'm proud to say this amazing group of community volunteers, which includes many groups from all the University of Hawaii campuses on this island, we've cleared 8 acres of wetland, shoreline, and loko'ia of invasive mangrove and rubbish that was up to my waist in places, and I'm almost 6 feet tall. And then I just came from a work day today where we cleared more invasive weeds and planted more native restoration plants. Our hui has demonstrated the power of community-driven change. And for a long time, I thought that only happened in Ko'olapoko. I was so inspired by what was happening at Paipai'ohe'e'ia and Waikalua Loko and up at the North Shore at Loko'ea and Ka'ala Farms in Waianae. I have to be honest that for 2 decades, I did not know that there were so many aina kia'i and so much restoration happening in the Ewa Moku. So if you take away nothing else, take away that Ewa rising. It's happening. And strategy number 3 is what I call nahopena'a'o, and that is a concept that started to permeate the DOE before I retired. And it's a wonderful way of describing a constant cycle of learning and teaching. So when it comes to Hawaiian history and oli and mo'olelo and place names, I'm a slow learner. But everybody on our staff is dedicated to learning, and we learn from the students. We learn from teachers throughout the area. We learn from a growing number of documents that have been digitized, from Kanupepa, from digitized historical maps, from kupuna interviews. We learn from others who are engaged in Mālama Aina all around Oahu, some of the organizations that I've mentioned. And we get very excited to share what we've learned with schools and all our community volunteers, including hundreds of military volunteers. I want to say that school students, like the Ewa Makai students that you see pictured there, and the students from Hawaii Tech Academy that are in the picture below, they're our #1 group of volunteers, and they are incredible. But the second largest portion of our volunteer workforce are military volunteers. And I want to say that the Navy Construction Battalion were one of the first ones that came with chainsaws to help us cut the very heavy, very gnarly sections of the red mangrove. And that a battalion of Marines, the 3rd Radio Battalion from Kaneohe Marine Corps Base, adopted the Nihola Loko'ia, and they come once a month. And no, we don't use excavators because of the sensitive nature of the fish ponds, the local ia in our site. So who needs an excavator when you've got a bunch of fabulous 8th graders and Marines? I also want to say that knowledge is power, and we work to empower the communities in the Ewa region and the next generation of Aina Kia'i. There's a lot of brilliance in these communities. There's a lot of knowledge in these communities, and we're very careful. We don't have the answers. But the voices of many in this moku have been ignored and silenced for a long time. So one thing that sometimes a holly lady can get criticized for maybe speaking out too much, but that's how I was raised. And it's very exciting for me to be, as I was this morning, with student leaders from the Dream House Academy. It's a beautiful charter school in Ewa. And boy, were they speaking out and speaking up. They had a lot of good questions, and they had a lot of good ideas about what they wanted to see this place in the future. And more than that, they were willing to dig in the mud to make it happen. So I will say to all you academics out there, we love it when you come get muddy with us. And before this presentation is over, I'll make sure that the audience knows how to join us if you'd like to. And to those of you that already have, mahalo. The reason that we believe in the power of community-driven change, grounded in Indigenous wisdom, to drive innovative collaboration is some of what you see on this screen. I want to walk you through it a little bit. Partnership building, hana, nahopena a'ao, that cycle of continuous learning and sharing, that's what we've put into this. And our outcomes are growing in significance. $2.5 million in collaborative funding. And that sounds like a lot, except when you have 210 acres of red mangrove lining the shores of what some call Westlock, what we call Ka'iho Opala'ai. So it's going to take a lot more than that to do the job, especially to develop ridge to reef partnerships. We're now engaged overall in 21 acres of restoration along the Pu'uloa shoreline, and we're honored to have just been awarded a NIFWIF grant that will allow us to continue and expand what we're doing for the next 3 years. And our outcome is engaged and empowered community. The Division of Aquatic Resources did not have the resources to do flood mitigation in the Honouliuli stream. They would not have been able to afford this change, but it's the community that got it done. On the right is actually a semi-cleared section of the Honouliuli stream. That's the Westlock Golf Course in the background, which the students today thought might be better utilized to grow food. Anyway, I thought it was a great idea. It was so blocked by mangrove that there was no fish passage. And you can see just partially the level of invasives in the riparian zone, obviously not protecting the water from runoff based on that color. The next picture with the beautiful anuenue is just a glimpse of the restoration. And I'm happy to say that the mangrove that's there in the middle of the stream is gone, and that the riparian zone now is covered in native akulikuli that the students from Waipahu High School planted last year. The next picture under the outcomes, again, that's what the mangrove looked like when we started. And that is my amazing intern from last year. That's Liz. She's from James Campbell High School. And that is the same picture where that group is gathered with the mangrove in the background. And that is what the mouth of Honouliuli stream looks like today, except just 8 months later, those native plants have filled in even more lushly. And the Milo trees are just a little bit higher. I do want to say again, we're only one of the many organizations in the Ewa Moku that are doing work like this. From Mālama Learning Center up in Palehua, who also works in Nanakuli, to Loko Ia Pae'ao. There are so many. And I also want to point out that 2, 3, and 4 in this picture That's Kamehameha School lands. And the three Aina stewards there have created a kipuka of abundance. Loko'ia and Lo'ikalo, fish ponds and taro that also helped feed the community during the COVID pandemic. So if you've never brought students or you've never participated in research in the Ewa Moku, which, by the way, this is Kamehameha School's Ewa region map, and that's why Mililani is cut out at the top. But this was part of the Ewa Aina Education Initiative that we worked on throughout the COVID pandemic. And what's exciting is that these organizations are building pilina amongst themselves. And there's a lot of amazing groups to come learn and work with and help restore Aina Momona or abundance throughout the entire Ewa Moku. I don't know about you, but I need a break from talking, and I'm sure you need a break from hearing my voice. So I want to thank Noho Papa and Kamehameha Schools. Please stay tuned. This video is 2.5 minutes long, and it so eloquently sums up the points that I have been trying to make. So I'll push play, and I invite you to sit back and enjoy the vai of Pu'uloa.
Halau pu'uloa he walau noewa, he walau moana nā ke hau. He ki o wailua he muli vai, noewa no ua aina ka I aha mau leo, aha mau ana ka leo ke kānaka. O pānea mai awane I hila hila, ke e ua I ala I loko ke kai. O ke kai pua kai, ula I ke kai o kuhia e.
Considered as the heartland of Oahu, Keawalau o Pu'uloa is renowned for its numerous fish ponds, famed oysters, bountiful harbors, and abundant water. From waterways that were guarded by Ka'ahupahau and Kahi'uka, Aina in Waipi'o, stored by John Papa'i'i, and fish ponds cultivated by Kalani Manuia and her ohana, Ewa has an enduring connection with Aina. The Ewa Moku's cultural landscape embodied native intelligence and generational well-being as demonstrated through its complex water and food systems that sustain them. Today, we have an opportunity to revitalize systems that cultivate this well. Through valuable work with the community, we see lands ecologically restored and cultural practices revived. We envision ways to integrate these dimensions into the education pathways of our ohana to ensure they develop a sense of kuleana and return to work as servant leaders.
I've seen that video many times, and I still, I get emotional. I want to say that, like many, the only thing I knew about this area growing up was Pearl Harbor and the bombing of Pearl Harbor that precipitated our involvement in World War II. But there's a much longer, much more amazing history of this place. And since the overthrow and the multiple traumas to the lands, waters, and people of this area, it's such an honor to be a part of the hulihia of restoring abundance. I want to say a shout out to two professors, two faculty at Leeward Community College, Dr. Anushka Fauci and Dr. Don Viviani. They were the first ones who began to work with us and to bring students to these Aina sites throughout Ewa. They've been wonderful collaborators and they've empowered their students in many things, specifically being able to sample plankton. And they're building a foundation for the characterization of that plankton to be a proxy or a methodology for biological monitoring in waters that right now are controlled by the Navy. It's not easy to do research in Pu'uloa, but I am asking those who are listening to work with us to continue to create more pathways. We need to find out what are in these beautiful, abundant waters, whether it's toxins from Red Hill or huge fisheries like that of the traveling mullet, the Anaiholo. So we're very honored to work with both Dr. Fauci and Dr. Viviani at Leeward Community College and the students from Leeward Community College. The other thing I will say is I'm so grateful to those of you at UH Manoa who have begun to work with us and other Ewa Aina sites. So many students from this region and the West Side travel all the way to the Manoa campus. And for those students to know that there's restoration, hope, and abundance in their own backyard, very meaningful. So mahalo to all of you, and to those of you who haven't come our way, there's another shameless plug. I just want to wrap up with 3 big ideas. Why Mālama Pu'uloa? Why pick waters that are literally classified as a Superfund site? So again, why Mālama Pu'uloa? Why waters that are classified as a Superfund site? When I shake people's hand and I'm introducing myself and I say, oh, we're working to restore Pearl Harbor to abundance, just so many have a look of confusion, and I understand it because growing up, I wasn't taught any of this. I wasn't taught that Pu'uloa was lined with at least 35 loko'ia, the largest mullet fishery probably on the island. So this was a place of historical, sustainable, and abundant aqua and agriculture, acres of lo'ikalo, one of the largest concentrations of freshwater in Hawaii. We all now know about the aquifer. We've heard a lot about it and how it is threatened. 2/3 of the island's drinking water, one of the largest estuaries in Hawaii, habitat for endemic and endangered species. And I want to say that we have a alai ula chick that was born at our site 3 weeks ago, one of the most endangered wetland birds in the world. And I want to say finally that we cannot have resilience to climate change and economic crises like we just lived through unless we focus on the biocultural restoration of Pu'uloa. It is for the health and resiliency of the entire island. So that's why we Mālama Pu'uloa. And we have a sense of urgency. We can't wait. It's not just Red Hill that threatens our water and food security. There has been pollution going on for decades. When I walk to the shoreline to take students, the wonderful 85 7th graders that were standing right there today, they see these signs. Warning, contaminated shellfish, for your health, do not eat. That heavy metal toxicity is in the nearshore food webs throughout Pu'uloa. And yet, we see more and more families fishing there and taking those fish home because of the economic insecurity that so many families face. Every plant that you see in this picture, oh, wait, nope, there is a Milo, I apologize. But in the background, you see invasive non-native species. We see inequities that are apparent in the public spaces and neighborhoods throughout the Ewa Moku. Those docks are full of loose boards. There are areas that are literally dangerous for small children. And this is a 25-acre public park. It's not what we see at Ala Moana Beach Park. Like myself, many were ignorant of important parts of Hawaiian history, and place names, and ecology, and food system knowledge, especially as they relate to the Ewa Moku. And I'm not an expert, I'm still learning. Disregard for the Hawaiian resource management and their expertise disregard for meaningful community involvement in developing any kind of resource management planning. A lot of the natural resource planning has completely gone around and ignored all of the brilliance that exists in these communities. Development itself has steamrolled over large parts of the Ewa Moku. So we see the continuous degradation from urban development and militarization. When you see the look on the kids' faces when they stand there, there are some times when they see fish die-offs. There's times when they look around and they just think, gosh, Auntie, can we do this? But they always leave. Those young people that come to work here, they leave with a sense of optimism. And we owe it to them to be optimistic. So why Mālama Pu'uloa? Because there's a sense of urgency. We need to get busy. So my final shameless plug is that there's lots of ways to join us. We'd love to work with you to bring your classes here. We'd love to develop research possibilities with you, because bioremediation, remediation of any kind, monitoring, our science and our scientific research is lagging behind in this area. We would invite you to come work with us. So we have second Saturday work days, except for Earth Day, because Earth Day is on the third Saturday this year. So I'd like to invite you all for our March 11th work day. Good fun, good people, good reason. We have our Wednesday Weed Warriors, and yes, I understand how people can snicker at that, but those people tackle the mangrove, and it's only for 2 hours, but we've opened that up every Wednesday. And if your class schedule, if your life schedule fits, we'd love to welcome you. We'd love to welcome groups from UH Manoa or any UH campus or anyone in the community to adopt a plot of our restoration site for long-term maintenance. This young lady pictured up in the right-hand corner adopted a plot with her ohana because she looked at our website as a 7th grader. 3 years later, they still take care of that whole area. They make sure that the invasives aren't coming back. And this young lady, Morgan, has planted probably about 100 native akulikuli. The Pu'uloa Strategic Partnership research collaborator, again, I'm not going to hesitate to shamelessly plug the fact that I would love to work with anyone in the audience and anyone who listens to this presentation later. It takes a hui. So if you can picture yourself here, come join us, because these slides, these photos, even my enthusiasm does not do it justice. Seeing is believing. And we are inspired by what's happening around the island, in fact, around the state, but it's our turn now. So I do invite everyone to learn more. Mālamapu'uloa.org is our website, and we do have an email contact platform there, and I'm the one that answers all those. So that's your direct link to me. Mālama Pu'uloa on Instagram, and if you've got your cell phone, I have been asked by my young assistant to put a shameless plug in for you to follow us on Instagram. And I guarantee you that if you're feeling discouraged, about dinner time, you'll see the post of those energetic 7th graders and all that they did today. But we do share good news on our posts. So I invite you to learn more. The other thing that we do is we share historic maps, mo'olelo, and links to some of our resource material. So I want to mahalo all of you for the honor of sharing this mana'o with you. Mahalo to all of you out there who Mālama Aina, I know so many of you did. I saw your names when you were entering the Zoom. And also mahalo to the UH Manoa Water Resources Research Center, just for the opportunity to share with you all. So I'm going to stop sharing screen, and Carrie's going to put us on a gallery view so I'll be able to address your questions.
All right, Sandy, thank you so much. Really inspiring to see the work that the community has done. I'm going to open up the floor for questions. So feel free to enter any questions into the chat. And I can read it for you, or if you want, please ask to unmute, and then I'll give you unmute privileges. So
I've got the chat over here, but I have to say, I am tired and the font is pretty small. So Carrie, I will appreciate your help, but I also invite anyone to unmute, and I see so many people that I know out there. Aloha to all of my amazing collaborators, to so many of my heroes. Ken Kaneshiro, I want to see your face, because he was one of those. He taught me about coggle and spaghetti diagrams that you guys saw at the beginning of this presentation. And he was one of the first ones that enabled me to believe that something like the Hawai watershed partnership could form. So yeah, we look to you, we look to Mālama Mauna Loa, we look to all of the organizations in Ko'olaupoko. So many of my heroes have tuned in today. And for those of you that I haven't met yet, come join us. I don't see any questions yet, but please feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question. And I would invite you to pop on that video so that we can say aloha to each other as we journey off into our weekends.
if anyone has a question, you can also use the raise hand feature, and I can give you the unmute access. In the meantime, though, I have a question if you want to. You mentioned that there wasn't really, we haven't accomplished the full ridge to reef integration yet, but I was wondering what pathways you see to getting to that point, where you think the most immediate work would need to be done for that.
It's a Vaimomi, it's a Pearl reference, but I will say in 1994, we aren't able to turn on the video for some reason. Oh, okay. Oh, Carrie, can you let people turn on the video? It might be a UH security thing.
Yeah, it's a security for, all right, I'm gonna trust everybody that nobody's a Zoom bomber here. So I'll enable the video and
then I will answer that very profound, amazing question. So if you were trying to turn on the video, you can now, and I'd love to see your faces from the years of being a school teacher. And plus I see people that know me. So thank you for getting me to this presentation. I admit I'm still nervous. Anyway, Ridge to Reef watershed partnerships. What we have is we have pearls that are along a string. So we have organizations that are, for instance, ours and what we're working with on DAR. We have agroforestry up in Kunia. We have Palehua. We have the Waianae Mountain Watershed Partnership. But there's a lot of space in there with a lot of sedimentation and Lord knows what going into our Honouliuli watershed. And yeah, we're just testing what's going into Pu'uloa and the largest collection of fresh water, our aquifer, and a very abundant food system. So I think all around the island, I call them Christmas lights. In 1994, I had to search very, very hard. Where can I take my students? Who can teach me? Because, oh boy, when I moved here, I really, really didn't have a clue, even though I still feel kind of clueless now. But now I look around and these restoration sites are like Christmas lights around the island. And I truly believe the next step that's so like Hawaii is so close. We've got to be able to fill in those gaps. One thing that's very simple is if you look at a GIS layer, and Dr. Kaneshiro, you're the first one who said, get out those maps and use your GIS. I dare you to add a layer that says public schools. If you want Christmas lights, the public schools fill in so many of those gaps on every single watershed. And I've worked with my students when I was teaching at Mililani from ridge to reef, out into the reef. Yes, DOE students can get wet. That's an old myth. So schools are one way. Involving the community is another way. And I think that the Pu'uloa strategic partnership, no, DAR can't do it by itself. No, the Commission of Water, oh gosh, help me, Seaworm can't do it by themselves, but together, collaboratively, Rich Reef watershed partnerships are definitely a possibility. Don't forget schools, don't forget community, get rid of those silos. So that's the short answer, because I don't have all the answers, but we're so close. A lot of pearls out there. Aurora, aloha. She might be muted, Carrie. Can she?
Sorry, this is me using the
Oh, there you
phone.
go.
And I'm actually looking at the big radar ball. I guess I was wondering, so I'm sorry I missed the beginning, but you know, you're doing the work at Kapapapuhi. But what, you know, because that's one place you folks can work, but as I'm looking out over Pu'uloa, what are other access points, and are there others maybe that can do monitoring or sort of follow some of the models and lessons? Can you speak to that Eva Aina partnership? I think that's where some of that work is happening.
Yeah, and I want to thank Kamehameha Schools and KUA, because they've been so helpful in allowing us to build Pilina, which, you know, it was hard during COVID. I couldn't gather for a while, but I didn't know about Kuhiavaho, for instance. It's an amazing organization that's on KS lands. So a couple of access points is right behind Leeward Community College. When you go work with folks on those KS lands, you have access to the Waiava stream and to multiple punavai, or freshwater springs. The other thing that I mentioned, and this was the vision of students from Waipahu High School, that was not our vision, we didn't come up with that idea, is that Leeward Bikeway parallels the shoreline. There's already infrastructure there to access. You can bring in vehicles, you can ride your bike, you can walk, and it's south or parallel of the rail line. So maybe you guys will be able to take the rail someday out this way. So all along the bike path, there's access points to all the streams, Waiava, Waikele, Honouliuli. That bike path connects every single restoration site. And even Blaisdell Park is wide open. I would say that on some of those locations that a researcher should not come by themselves. The brave Honor Booth would be out in some of these places by herself. And Man or Woman, there are some safety issues. But in terms of the physical infrastructure and safe access, you can stand on the shoreline, you can sample water, sediment, crabs, and fish all the way out to the mouth of the stream. And with the powerhouses that I see, and I'm imagining the other powerhouses that are in this group, there's no reason why University of Hawaii cannot work together with the Navy to get more access to those waters. Because I will say that when the amazing Megan Donahue and Eileen Nally reached out to the Navy, I will briefly say that they were given one email after another, I think 12. And the last email that they were given was the mini mart at the public dock. So one of the folks that we are working with NAVFAC, especially through that new NIFWIF grant. And we are trying to build that, get rid of that barrier. I think with Red Hill, there's not many silver linings in the Red Hill situation, but I think the Navy Joint Base Pacific Command and NAVFAC, I think they're much more open to opportunities to do something positive in terms of restoration and to build back that community trust. So lots of physical access. There's 9 watersheds. And if you want me to take you to any of those access points, I'll show you. The one thing I will say is that much of the land along the shoreline is either city and county managed or city and county with a memorandum of understanding to the Navy. Please don't say Navy lands. Please don't say Navy waters. But at each one of those restoration sites, we have gotten through the red tape and we have the piece of paper with the memorandum of understanding that community has access and permitting to be able to come in and make change. And I won't say it was easy, but I say it's on. The Waipahu Mala'ai Garden Complex with the Waikele riparian zone, we began that in August. It is now almost February and we're still waiting. But the project before that took a year. So we're shortening the liability, red tape, access issues. So long answered, but that was a very important question. So short answer, if any of you want to know where to get to the water safely with your students or safely with a researcher, call me or email me through malamapu'uloa.org. Success with NOAA. Yes. Jean Tanimoto, the coastal management. She's now a member of the Pu'uloa Strategic Partnership, and to a lesser degree, the NOAA BWET education grant paid my salary for a year. So that enabled me to do all that I do. So when you look at that beautiful lake, Ford Island's right in the middle. And working with the Coral Reef the Coral Reef Alliance, we're looking ahead at some regional opportunities. And what we'd like to do is get some kind of underwater camera. We know that because of Navy security, we might have to run just a loop of approved videos and photographs. But imagine that you're riding your bike or walking along that bike path, and there's a sign that talks about the resilient corals and the population of mullet that's out there. And you can point your phone to a QR code, and then you can see these amazing images because people have been blocked off from the reefs and the wonderful coral reef ecosystems that are out there. So that's actually something that we're cooking up, and we'd like to have it right at the NOAA headquarters on Ford Island. Or is it Moku Ume Ume? I'm still getting used to that name. Oh, would I sit? Oh, thank you. Guys, please unmute if you have any other questions. And Dr. Kaneshiro, you are a humble person, but I am so grateful to see your face, because when I was I was a high school teacher, I had no idea where to start. I just knew that we really wanted to start. As my students said, Miss, where's our Mālama organization here at Mililani High? And we looked around and there wasn't Mālama. And then we were on Koho'olave, and Uncle Emmett Aluli said, take what you learn on Koho'olave and do something in your own backyard. And I didn't know where to start. And I went to Dr. Kaneshiro, and he helped me get out your maps, look at it from a bird's eye view, get in there and find out what's going on and do your homework. And what he created really helped with that. So again, shout out. And aloha, Sani Weldon. I see that
Hi,
hand.
Sandy. Thank you so much. This is really incredible work. As you're mentioning maps, it brings my mind to another project that I'm working on, which is using the restricted use pesticide data. I've worked with HAPA, the Hawaii Alliance for Progressive Action. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. They're based kind of out of Kauai. They have beautiful maps of pesticide use of all the islands. And you may or may not know that the highest concentration of pesticides is used right in central Oahu, right in Mililani, right in Wahioa. And so I'm wondering, if there's any anecdotal observations of maybe some effects of pesticides either on the environment. I've heard some community concerns of health effects, or also if you know of environmental testing, soil, water, sediment for things like pesticides in any of your restoration work.
Awesome question. I will say that the amount of testing and monitoring in any watershed in the entire Ewa Moku is not what it should be. Self-monitoring doesn't work. I will also say that in Kunia, there's another Superfund site. There are Superfund sites up in the Waikele watershed in Schofield. So I will say that lead from the years of leaded fuel is one of the major heavy metal toxins that we're concerned about. The storm drain system is a source of incredible levels of pollution of anything on the ground. So the storm drain system is a problem. Septic tanks are still getting permitted and they line the shoreline of Pu'uloa. So if you name a pollutant, it's in these waters. And it's not necessarily being stopped, including jet fuel and fire retardants, PFAS. So before we can remediate, or maybe as we remediate, we've got to stop those sources on land. I do want to say that the Oahu Soil and Water Conservation and some of the folks up Kunia have really done amazing work with the farmers protecting riparian zones. I think it's been a little bit harder with the seed corn companies upstream. So there's more that we can do with pesticides. I'd love to work with you, but that's one drop in a big bucket of pollutants, and it's a drop that we need to get a handle on. So I'd love to see that layer. I think GIS layers are very sexy things. So I know we're already in email communication, and maybe I can figure out how to access that. So thank you for that. And yes, I'm aware of the progress that they've made on Kauai. So yeah, yes. And we don't want it to go from Wahiwa, it all goes to North Shore. So we don't want it going that direction either.
Okay. I hate to cut off any other discussion, but yeah, I think probably want to wrap it up now.
Well, I will just say again, I'm so grateful to all of you who could chime in. I'm grateful to anyone who listens to this presentation later, and I'm so grateful to the UH Manoa Water Resources Research Center and to Carrie for your wonderful facilitation. Everybody, please Mālama pono'i, please Mālama pu'uloa, and have hope, because it's happening right now. With all the challenges, there is hope. So please take care.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll have our next seminar in a couple of weeks.
Okay, guys, take care, and many of you, I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Sandy, so much. I really appreciate you joining us and sharing your work and the work of the community.
The work of those cute little 7th graders from this morning. I gotta go empty out the truck right now. All right, take care and have a great weekend.
Thank you, you too.